The silent fire of envy. Have you ever felt that quiet sting in your heart when someone else succeeds? Perhaps your friend bought a new house, your colleague received a promotion, or even a neighbor posted pictures of their perfect vacation. Without saying a word, a subtle fire begins to burn inside. That fire is envy. Envy is one of the most silent yet powerful poisons of the heart. Unlike anger, which bursts out suddenly, or fear, which shakes us immediately, envy hides in the shadows. It whispers, "Why not me? Why them? When will it be my turn?" The Buddha called envy one of the unwholesome roots of suffering. It traps us in cycles of comparison and jealousy, constantly pulling us away from peace. Yet the same teachings also show us a path to freedom, a path of mindfulness, compassion, and contentment. In this video, here on Infinite Buddhist Teachings, we will explore together the Buddhist teachings on letting go of envy. We will use simple but deep examples from animals, nature, and human life to bring these lessons to life. At the end of each section, I will also offer a small practice, a way for you to transform these teachings into living wisdom. Stay with me until the end. Because envy may seem small, but once we learn to release it, our hearts open to joy, gratitude, and true freedom. Number 1, the root of envy, comparison, and jealousy. At its core, envy is not some mysterious force that falls upon us from the outside. It arises quietly, almost invisibly, from the act of comparison and jealousy. The mind, so quick to measure, whispers questions we rarely notice. Am I better than them? Am I worse? Am I enough? These silent comparisons build the stage for envy to perform. And once envy appears, it doesn't simply look at the world, it distorts it, making us feel smaller in the presence of another's light. Buddhist teachings on letting go of envy remind us that this struggle is deeply human. To compare is natural, but to cling to those comparisons is where suffering begins. Imagine those two bamboo shoots in the forest. One grows taller, another slightly shorter. Both receive the same sun and rain, yet the shorter one suffers because it looks sideways instead of upward. That is what comparison and jealousy do to us. Instead of focusing on our own path, we keep glancing at others, forgetting that every being grows at its own pace with its own beauty. Think of a student who feels joy after scoring well on a test, until he learns his friend scored a little higher. Suddenly, his happiness dissolves into restlessness. Or the man who loves his modest car until he sees his neighbor drive something newer. What changed? Not the child's effort, not the man's car, but the lens of comparison. Through that lens, peace turns into dissatisfaction. Here lies the quiet wisdom of contentment in Buddhism. Happiness does not come from surpassing others, but from embracing what is already present in our lives. When we pause to notice our blessings, the poison of envy begins to lose its grip. Instead of asking, "Why don't I have what they have?" we begin to wonder, what gifts are already here that I have been overlooking? Yet awareness alone is not enough. To truly shift envy into something healing, we must practice mindfulness. When jealousy arises, instead of pushing it away or drowning in it, we can simply observe. This is envy. This is comparison. Naming it softly gives us distance. We are not our envy. We are the awareness that notices it. That is the first step toward release. And in that release lies compassion for others. If someone else shines, it does not dim our own light. Their success can be an invitation rather than a threat. Instead of asking how we fall short, we can ask what quality in them we admire and how we might grow it within ourselves. In this way, envy becomes a teacher, guiding us toward growth rather than bitterness. The Buddha's wisdom shows us that letting go of envy is not about suppressing or denying our feelings. It is about turning comparison into clarity, jealousy into inspiration, and competition into compassion. Each time envy visits, we have a choice to let it shrink our world or to let it expand our understanding of what is possible for us. Comparison is the thief of peace. The Buddha often reminded us that suffering comes not from what others have, but from our clinging and grasping. For 1 week, keep a small notebook. Each time you feel envy, pause and write. 1. Who am I comparing myself to? 2. What quality do I admire in them? 3. How can I cultivate this quality in my own way? This transforms envy from poison into a map for growth. Number 2. Contentment in Buddhism, discovering enough. There is a gentle beauty in the word enough. In the rush of life, it often feels like a word we rarely visit. We strive for more success, more possessions, more recognition. And in that endless striving, envy quietly takes root. Buddhist teachings on letting go of envy invite us to rediscover the forgotten art of contentment. Imagine a simple clay pot filled with water. If the pot has a crack, no amount of water can ever keep it full. This is how envy feels. No matter what we gain, the mind leaks joy through its endless comparisons. But when the pot is whole, even a little water feels abundant. This is the heart of contentment in Buddhism, the realization that peace comes not from what we collect, but from how we see what we already hold. I once heard the story of a fisherman who lived by the river. Each morning, he caught just enough fish for his family and spent the rest of the day in laughter with his children. When a wealthy merchant asked why he didn't fish more, to sell and grow rich, the fisherman simply smiled. I already have what I need. Why spend my life chasing what I already enjoy today? This is the spirit of contentment, not laziness, but wisdom. Comparison and jealousy whisper that we must always run faster, climb higher, and prove ourselves worthy. Yet contentment answers with stillness. You are already enough. When we practice mindfulness, we begin to see the richness in simple things. The taste of clean water, the warmth of a friend's voice, the blessing of a body that breathes and walks. These small recognitions are not trivial. They are the very foundation of happiness. Let us not mistake contentment for stagnation. It does not mean refusing to grow. Rather, it means growing without poison. When we are content, we can still strive, but not out of envy or fear. We strive from joy, from curiosity, from love. And in that spirit, success no longer carries the shadow of jealousy. A practice you can try is gratitude journaling. Each evening, write down 3 simple things you already have that make your life rich. They need not be dramatic. Perhaps the roof above your head, the smile of a neighbor, the quiet moment before sleep. Over time, this practice trains the heart to see abundance, a dissolving envy before it can even take root. In truth, contentment and compassion for others are sisters. When we know the sweetness of enough in our own life, we are free to rejoice in the blessings of others. Their light no longer threatens us because our own lamp is already lit. And with mindfulness practice, we can keep that lamp glowing, steady, and bright, even when the winds of comparison blow. Thus, contentment in Buddhism is not just a teaching, it is liberation. It is the quiet, unshakable joy that rises when we realize, I have enough, I am enough, this moment is enough. When we live with gratitude, envy dissolves because we stop asking, why don't I have what they have? And start seeing what treasures already live in my hands. Tonight, before you sleep, write down 3 things you already have that make your life rich. Not big achievements, but simple gifts. Clean water, a supportive friend, a safe place to rest. Do this daily for 30 days. You will train your mind to see abundance instead of lack. Number 3, compassion for others, transforming envy into joy. Envy thrives on the belief that life is a competition. If you rise, I fall. If you shine, I fade. But the truth carried within Buddhist teachings on letting go of envy is that another's success does not diminish us. It can, if we allow it, expand us. The medicine for envy is compassion, a softening of the heart that turns jealousy into joy. Think of a garden where flowers bloom in many colors. The rose does not envy the lotus, nor does the lotus resent the daisy. Each flower adds beauty in its own way, and the garden is most radiant when all are allowed to flourish. In the same way, when we practice compassion for others, their success no longer threatens us. It enriches the collective beauty of life. I once met a young artist who confided in me. He said that whenever his peers sold more paintings than he did, he felt crushed. His joy vanished in the shadow of their achievements. But when he began practicing mindfulness, he noticed something new. Envy was teaching him what he valued most. He didn't actually resent their success. He longed for recognition. With compassion, he began to celebrate their talent instead of fighting it. And in doing so, he discovered that his own creativity flowed more freely. Their light, rather than dimming his, became a mirror guiding him toward his own path. This is the miracle of compassion. It transforms the narrow lens of comparison and jealousy into a wide vision of shared humanity. When someone else achieves, we can whisper to ourselves, "Their joy is also my joy. Their growth opens the possibility of mine." This shift is not easy. It requires mindfulness practice to pause, breathe, and notice the rising envy without judgment. But in that pause, a door opens. Compassion does not mean we ignore our own needs. It means we see clearly that another's blessings are not stolen from us. Just as the sun shines on all without preference, life offers opportunities for each in different forms. Sometimes we walk in light, sometimes in shadow, but compassion allows us to honor both without bitterness. A simple practice you can try is mudita, the cultivation of sympathetic joy. Each time you feel jealousy stir, close your eyes and silently repeat, "May they be happy. May they continue to thrive. May I also walk my path with peace." At first, the words may feel forced, but over time they soften the heart. Slowly, envy loses its sharp edge, replaced by a warmth that connects rather than divides. When contentment in Buddhism joins hands with compassion for others, envy dissolves almost naturally. We realize that happiness is not a limited pie to be divided, but an endless sky where many stars can shine together. And with mindfulness practice, we can keep our hearts open, learning to rejoice in the light of others while tending the flame of our own. Compassion is not weakness, it is freedom. For when we free ourselves from envy, we discover that the success of others can be the very wind that lifts our own wings. Compassion for others creates freedom. When a friend succeeds, imagine their joy as your own. This softens the heart and breaks the cycle of jealousy. Each time envy arises, close your eyes and say, "May they be happy. May their success continue. May I also find my path." Repeat until your heart feels lighter. This is known as mudita, sympathetic joy, one of the 4 immeasurables in Buddhist practice. Number 4, mindfulness practice, observing envy without judgment. In the stillness of meditation halls, monks are often taught to watch their thoughts as if they were clouds drifting across a wide sky. They do not chase them nor push them away, they simply notice. This is the essence of mindfulness practice, and it is also the key to softening the grip of envy. Envy often sneaks into our hearts without warning. A friend's success, a neighbor's comfort, or even a stranger's beauty can suddenly awaken comparison and jealousy. Without awareness, these feelings multiply quickly, pulling us into dissatisfaction. But when we bring mindfulness to that very moment, everything changes. Instead of drowning in the feeling, we step back and see, this is envy arising in me. This is the clinging mind. This is the part of me comparing. Think of sitting beside a river. Leaves, branches, even bits of trash float by. If you jump in, you are swept away. But if you sit quietly on the bank, you see each object drift past. The river is your mind. The floating debris is envy, jealousy, and desire. Through mindfulness, you learn not to jump in. You simply observe the flow. A young professional once told me that whenever his colleagues were praised, his chest tightened. He would immediately think, "Why not me? Am I not good enough?" But after learning mindfulness practice, he began to pause whenever that tightening appeared. Instead of reacting, he breathed deeply and silently named it. Jealousy, envy, comparison. To his surprise, just naming it gave him space. The feeling rose and then, like a wave, eventually passed. He discovered that he was not his envy, he was the awareness watching it. This gentle noticing is one of the most powerful gifts of Buddhist teachings on letting go of envy. We are not asked to fight envy, nor to pretend it does not exist. We are asked only to see it clearly. Once seen, its power weakens. The act of awareness transforms envy from a master into a passing guest. A simple exercise you can try is this. 1. Sit quietly for 5 minutes each day. 2. Focus on your breath. 3. When thoughts of envy or comparison arise, name them softly. Envy, jealousy, grasping. 4. Do not judge yourself. Simply watch as the thought rises, peaks, and fades. Over time, this practice teaches you that every feeling is impermanent. What seems overwhelming in one moment often dissolves in the next. And when envy is seen through this lens, it loses its sting. Mindfulness also connects naturally with contentment in Buddhism and compassion for others. For when we observe envy without judgment, we create space to replace it with gratitude or kindness. Mindfulness opens the door, but contentment and compassion step through, helping us walk a lighter path. Thus, mindfulness practice is not just a technique. It is a way of living. It reminds us that envy does not define us. We are not the jealousy, nor the comparison. We are the vast sky that can hold every passing cloud without losing its own brilliance. Number 5. Letting go, living freely. There is an old teaching in Buddhism. Holding onto envy is like gripping a burning coal with the intent to throw it at someone else. In the end, the person most harmed is not the one we envy, but ourselves. This is why Buddhist teachings on letting go of envy do not merely advise us to endure it, but to release it entirely. Letting go does not mean pretending envy never existed. It means acknowledging it, learning from it, and then setting it down. Imagine carrying a heavy stone in your hands as you walk. At first, you may feel strong, even capable of managing it. But as miles pass, your arms ache, your body tires, and the weight becomes unbearable. Freedom comes the moment you place the stone on the ground. Envy is that stone, unnecessary weight that exhausts the spirit. I recall the story of a monk who began to feel jealousy toward another brother in the monastery. The younger monk was often praised by the teacher while he felt overlooked. For weeks he carried bitterness until one day he approached the younger monk and bowed deeply, saying, "Your virtue reminds me of the qualities I still need to grow. Thank you for showing me my path." In that instant, his envy dissolved. He had not lost anything. Instead, he had gained clarity, humility, and freedom. This is the power of letting go. When we release envy, we do not shrink, we expand. We step out of the shadow of comparison and jealousy and walk into the light of our own path. A practical way to explore this is through visualization. At the end of each day, close your eyes and ask yourself, what envy did I carry today? Picture that envy as a stone in your hands. Then imagine placing it down on the ground, watching it sink gently into the earth. As you visualize this, feel your shoulders lighten, your breath deepen, your heart soften. This small ritual, repeated daily, can become a powerful act of freedom. When we let go, we also create room for contentment in Buddhism to bloom. The mind that was once occupied with envy becomes spacious enough to notice blessings. Letting go allows us to see clearly without the distortion of jealousy, and in that clarity, we naturally begin to cultivate compassion for others. Their success no longer threatens us, it inspires us. And mindfulness practice is what sustains this freedom. Without awareness, envy returns silently. But with awareness, we catch it early, acknowledge it, and release it before it hardens into resentment. To let go is not to lose, it is to finally live freely. Envy ties us to stories of lack, but letting go unties those knots and restores us to peace. The river flows, the bamboo grows, the garden blooms, and in that unfolding there is no need for envy, only the joy of being part of life's vast, radiant whole. Letting go is not losing, it is gaining freedom. When we release envy, we gain space to walk our own path. Each night, ask yourself, what envy did I carry today? Can I place it down like setting down a heavy stone? Then visualize dropping it, watching it sink, and walking away lighter. My friend, envy is part of being human, but it does not have to rule us. Buddhist teachings on letting go of envy remind us that comparison and jealousy create chains, but contentment in Buddhism, compassion for others, and mindfulness practice offer keys to freedom. Think of it this way. The sun never envies the moon never envies the stars, and yet each shines in its own time. So do you. If today's teaching touched your heart, share in the comments below. When was the last time envy visited you, and how did you respond? Your story may inspire someone else on this journey. Remember, letting go of envy is not a single act, but a practice, one breath, one moment, one day at a time. And as you walk this path, may you find joy not just in your own life, but in the happiness of others. Stay present, stay kind, and may your journey be filled with light. My dear friend, envy is a shadow that all of us encounter, but it doesn't have to follow us forever. The path of the Buddha shows us that comparison and jealousy are illusions that rob us of peace, while contentment in Buddhism, compassion for others, and mindfulness practice return us to the freedom of the present moment. Remember this, the sun never envies the moon, and the moon never envies the stars. Each shines in its own time, in its own way, and so do you. When you learn to let go, you don't lose anything. You gain the joy of walking your own path, free and unburdened. If today's reflection on Buddhist teachings on letting go of envy has touched your heart, I invite you to pause for a moment and share your own story. Tell us in the comments, when was the last time envy visited you, and what helped you release it? Your words might be the very lantern that lights the way for someone else. And if you found this teaching meaningful, please like this video, share it with a friend who may need these words, and don't forget to subscribe to Infinite Buddhist Teachings. Together, we can create a community where wisdom is not just learned, but lived. where each of us shines without comparison in the beauty of our own truth.